Clara had always been a pillar of elegance and composure. At 48, she carried herself with a grace that turned heads wherever she went. She had raised her 2 daughters with love and care, watching them grow into women she was proud of. When Lily, her eldest, married Ethan, Clara was struck by how effortlessly he became part of the family. Ethan was kind, attentive, and devoted to her daughter husband any mother would wish for her child. But life has a way of complicating even the most straightforward stories. From the moment Ethan entered their lives, Clara noticed the way he paid attention not just to Lily, but to everyone around him. He was the first to offer help at family gatherings, the first to notice when Clara looked tired. Over time, their conversations grew longer and more personal. They talked about books, movies, and the challenges of navigating life's responsibilities. One rainy afternoon, Ethan stopped by Clara's house to drop off a casserole Lily had made. Clara invited him in for coffee. They talked for hours as the rain poured outside, sharing stories they had never told anyone else. "You remind me of what I imagine a best friend would be," Ethan said, his voice warm. Clara smiled, though her heart fluttered in a way she didn't understand. "You're a wonderful man, Ethan. Lily is lucky to have you." But as the weeks passed, those moments of connection became harder to ignore. Clara found herself looking forward to Ethan's visits, to their conversations that felt deeper than any she'd had in years. The turning point came during Lily's weekend trip with friends. Ethan stopped by Clara's house to pick up a forgotten set of tools. She invited him to stay for dinner, and they spent the evening laughing over wine and stories. As the night wore on, Ethan leaned back in his chair, his eyes meeting Clara's. "You make me feel seen," he said quietly. Clara's breath caught. "Ethan, we can't." But he interrupted her. I know it's wrong. But I can't ignore this. Whatever this is." For a moment, the room was silent, the weight of their unspoken feelings hanging between them. Then, as if drawn by an invisible force, Ethan leaned across the table and kissed her. Clara pulled away, tears in her eyes. "Ethan, this isn't right. We can't do this to Lily." But despite her words, the pull between them was undeniable. What began as a single moment spiraled into a full-fledged affair. They were careful, meeting in secret and ensuring no one suspected. Clara hated herself for betraying her daughter, for crossing a line she had sworn never to approach. Yet every moment with Ethan felt like a lifeline, a connection that filled a void she hadn't realized existed. Ethan, too, was torn. He loved Lily, but his feelings for Clara were unlike anything he had ever experienced. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional. An intimacy that felt as if it had been waiting for them all along. Secrets, however, have a way of surfacing. One evening, Lily returned home earlier than expected and found Ethan's car parked outside Clara's house. Suspicion turned to certainty when she saw them through the window. Ethan and her mother sitting too close, their hands intertwined. Lily burst through the door, her voice shaking with anger and betrayal. "What is this?" Clara stood, guilt written all over her face. No, Lily interrupted, tears streaming down her face. "How could you? Both of you?" Ethan tried to explain, but there was no justification for what they had done. The damage was irreversible. Lily left Ethan, cutting ties with both him and her mother. Clara was left alone, grappling with the weight of her choices. Ethan, too, found himself isolated, his love for Clara tainted by the hurt they had caused. Months turned into years, but the wounds remained fresh. Clara reached out to Lily repeatedly, hoping for forgiveness, but her daughter couldn't bring herself to mend the relationship. Ethan eventually moved away, seeking a fresh start. Clara stayed in her quiet home, haunted by memories of what she had lost. Clara spent the rest of her days reflecting on the fragile line they had crossed. Love, she realized, was complicated, but it could never justify betrayal. She had made a choice, and it had cost her everything. In the end, the affair wasn't about passion or desire. It was about two people searching for meaning in places they shouldn't have looked, and the price they paid was far greater than they could have imagined. Here's an expanded version of the story with more intimate moments of connection, focusing on the build-up of their relationship and the emotional weight behind their actions. The narrative will include additional kissing, moments to emphasize the complexity and tension of their affair. Clara had always prided herself on being the kind of mother who gave her daughters everything they needed: love, support, and guidance. When Lily introduced Ethan, Clara saw in him a man who seemed perfect for her daughter. He was kind, attentive, and deeply in love with Lily. It was impossible not to like him. But as the years passed, what started as admiration for Ethan transformed into something Clara never expected and couldn't control. Clara and Ethan's connection started with simple conversations. During family dinners or casual visits, Ethan often sought her advice. "You have this way of making everything seem manageable," he once told her. One evening, Ethan arrived early to pick Lily up for dinner, but she wasn't ready. Clara invited him to sit on the porch. The sun was setting, and the air was warm, heavy with the scent of summer. They talked about life, relationships, and the things they wished they could change. "Sometimes," Ethan said, his voice soft, "I feel like no one really understands me." Clara turned to him, her heart aching at the vulnerability in his voice. "I understand you," she said without thinking. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, the world seemed to fall away. Clara felt her heart race as Ethan leaned in slightly, his face close enough that she could feel his breath. She pulled back abruptly, shaking her head. "Ethan, we can't," she whispered. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, his cheeks blushing. "I don't know what came over me." The moment lingered in Clara's mind for weeks. She tried to push it aside, to focus on her life and her role as Lily's mother. But every time she saw Ethan, the memory of that almost kiss haunted her. It wasn't long before the tension between them came to a head. One afternoon, Ethan stopped by Clara's house to drop off a gift from Lily. As he turned to leave, he hesitated. "Clara," he said, his voice trembling, "I can't stop thinking about you." She froze, her heart pounding. "Ethan, you're married to my daughter. This is wrong." "I know it is," he said, stepping closer. "But I can't pretend I don't feel this. Can you?" Before she could answer, Ethan leaned in and kissed her. It was tentative at first, as though he was giving her a chance to pull away. But Clara didn't. The kiss deepened, filled with a longing they had both tried to deny. When they finally broke apart, Clara felt tears welling in her eyes. "This can't happen again," she said, her voice barely audible. But they both knew it was a promise they couldn't keep. A line never meant to be crossed asterisk. What followed were weeks of stolen moments and secret meetings. Each time, Clara told herself it would be the last. But every time Ethan kissed her, she felt a spark of life she hadn't felt in years. One evening, they met at a secluded park under the guise of a casual walk. As they sat on a bench hidden by trees, Ethan reached for her hand. "I've never felt this way before," he admitted, his eyes searching hers. Clara shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Ethan, this is tearing me apart. I love my daughter, and I love you too. But this isn't fair to anyone." Ethan cupped her face in his hands, brushing away her tears with his thumbs. "I know, but I can't stay away from you." He kissed her again, this time with more desperation. Clara felt herself surrendering, her resolve crumbling under the weight of her emotions. The kisses became more frequent, more passionate. They found excuses to see each other, even when they knew the risk was too high. Each touch, each embrace felt like a forbidden thrill, but it also came with an unbearable guilt. One night, after a family gathering, Ethan stayed behind to help Clara clean up. As they stood in the dimly lit kitchen, their hands brushed while reaching for the same plate. "Ethan," Clara said softly, her voice trembling, "we can't keep doing this." "I know," he replied, stepping closer, "but I can't stop." This time, when he kissed her, Clara didn't hesitate. She wrapped her arms around him, losing herself in the moment. The sound of the dishwasher humming in the background and the faint glow of the moonlight made it feel as though they were in their own world, one where their love wasn't forbidden. But secrets have a way of surfacing. One afternoon, Lily accidentally stumbled upon Ethan's phone and saw a series of messages between him and Clara. At first, she thought it was a mistake, but as she read further, the truth became undeniable. When Lily confronted them, the house erupted in anger and heartbreak. "How could you?" Lily screamed, tears streaming down her face. "Both of you, how could you do this to me?" Clara tried to explain, but there were no words that could justify what she had done. Ethan stood silently, his guilt evident in the way he avoided Lily's gaze. Lily left Ethan and cut ties with Clara, unable to forgive the betrayal. Ethan moved out of town, hoping to escape the pain and start anew. Clara was left alone, drowning in regret. The kisses, the stolen moments they had felt, so right in the moment, but had come at the cost of everything she held dear.